Hey guys, what's going on? Jeff here from Films at Home. Thanks for coming back to the channel. Today's video is basically all about you guys. It's all about 10,000 subscribers and it's all about Q&A. So I haven't done a Q&A video yet, and I'm sure a lot of you have been curious and had questions. So I opened it up on YouTube. I opened it up on Instagram. I've got a list of questions here to go through and answer. So I thought this was a pretty interesting way to kind of give back, let you guys get to know me a little bit more. And thank you for 10,000 subscribers. Obviously, we're going to keep that train rolling. So, excuse me, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Turn on those notifications, like these videos, and keep spreading the word. Keep sharing them with your friends. I really appreciate it. But yeah, today, pretty much just a Q&A. So I'm going to jump right into it. I got a lot of good questions off Instagram and YouTube, so I can't remember everybody who asked everything, and some people asked, multiples of the same question. But I picked a list of, I'd say, a dozen or so, maybe 15 questions here that I'm going to go through. And the first one is sort of, this is a question from Joe Martinez. I know he asked this one because it was one of the first I saw. He's got a channel on YouTube too. You should go check him out. He buys a ton of movies. He's nuts. But his question was basically, have you always been a collector? And what did you used to collect? And so it made me think back because I've been thinking back a lot on how I even got into movies. But if I'm going way back in the day, I know when I was a kid, I collected baseball cards like you wouldn't believe. I mean, we had, me and my brothers, we had tens of thousands of cards, if not like six figures. Like, we had cards on cards on cards. We bought baseball cards all the time. I collected those religiously for a long time, really, until I probably got into about high school. Maybe 8th grade. High school is when it kind of slowed down and stopped. It's also sort of when baseball cards sort of went out of style, and you didn't see them in shops anymore. But I definitely was always a collector. It's funny actually because my dad is a big collector, so that probably had an influence on me, although he collects books. So he probably has more books than I have movies. At my parents' house, there is an entire wall of it's like a 30-foot wall, and it's full of shelves, and it's completely full of books stacked on top of books. Like, there's literally, there must be 2,000 or 3,000 books at least just in that room. So so I used to collect other things, and somehow I got into movies. I kind of fell in love with that, and that's where I am today. So that's kind of interesting because that leads into another question, which is sort of, how long have you been collecting Blu-ray and 4K and DVDs, and what was your first Blu-ray? So these are two separate questions. I can remember when I started collecting. It was 2012, the summer of 2012. I was a freshman in college. I had just got out of my freshman year, and I got a job working at a summer camp. Started to make some half-decent money for a 19-year-old. And one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to buy a surround sound system. And at the time, I was mostly doing, streaming, Netflix type stuff. Netflix DVDs were still coming to my house, so I was getting the through the mail stuff. And then we had a decent collection of probably, 100 or so DVDs that my parents had. And so I'd go through those and I'd watch those, but I wanted a surround sound system. And so what I ended up getting was one of these surround sound in a box, home theater in a box type things. And the receiver basically works as a Blu-ray player. So I ended up buying one from Samsung. I went to Best Buy, spent like $300, got a 5.1 system with a tiny little subwoofer, and it happened to have a Blu-ray 3D player, funny enough. And so once I got the Blu-ray player, I said, I should buy a couple movies on Blu-ray. It'll probably be great to listen to on the new system. And so that's what I did, and I can remember I didn't have that for very long before I went out and got Blu-rays, and the first Blu-ray I bought was Training Day. I bought it at Walmart. It was probably like $8, and even then at the time, Training Day was fairly cheap because it's a little bit of an older movie. But I loved Denzel Washington, and so Training Day At the time, Training Day was probably my favorite movie. I've since come off of that, and I'll talk about that later. But I went out and bought Training Day so I could have it on Blu-ray. And then the collection kind of spawned from that because I started just getting Denzel movies. I said, you know what? I want to have every Denzel Washington movie in my collection. So, you know, I bought Training Day. I bought stuff like Glory. I remember buying the movie Safe House that he was in with Ryan Reynolds. I remember trying to buy Philadelphia, but finding out it was pretty hard to get out of print. And I basically just started going out and collecting as many Denzel movies as I could. And then that sort of turned into, oh, if I like Denzel movies, I probably like these other movies. And now, you know, here we are 7 years later, and there's 2,500 movies in this room. So I've come a long way since just Denzel movies, I guess. So that sort of leads into another question, which is, what is my favorite all-time movie? If you asked me when I was 18, I'd tell you Training Day. But as of today, and I think for the foreseeable future, unless something amazing comes out, I don't know how it would be beat, but my favorite movie is Jaws. So Jaws is a movie I remember watching as a kid, and I would vacation on Cape Cod, which is close to where they filmed. Basically, they filmed it on Martha's Vineyard, right off of the Cape in Massachusetts. And so I'd be down there, I'd be at the beaches. And then basically I was like probably 6 or 7 when I first saw Jaws. And then I'd go to the beach and I was obsessed with sharks and loved the movie. And then as I got older, I started to rewatch it. You kind of have a different point of view. And I realized just how like actually incredible that movie is. And it's by far, I think, one of the greatest movies ever made. And it is my all-time favorite movie. It's a place that if I'm looking for a movie, if it's on TV, that I'll watch Jaws every time. If I'm taking a long flight for work or something, I have Jaws on my phone so I can watch that and just go back and rewatch it. I've got a Jaws poster out in the hallway leading up to my movie room, and I've taken the trip to Martha's Vineyard now a couple times and sort of did the Jaws tour where you can go and look at all the different sites where things were filmed. And so that was really cool to have that locally available and get to see all the real life spots. So another question that came in was about my favorite dead format. And so if you're thinking about dead formats, you could think about Betamax. VHS is technically a dead format. Laserdisc, HD DVD, you know, there's a bunch out there. There's older ones that I don't even know a whole lot about. But I think my favorite dead format is probably Laserdisc. I would say Laserdisc because it's all about the artwork. For me, I'm a collector, right? So I like to get the movies on the shelf. And if Laserdiscs weren't so huge, that's a real problem with collecting them. But some of their artwork is absolutely incredible. Some of the best artwork that's ever come out for a lot of really classic movies is on the Laserdisc. And so for that reason, for the shelf appeal, and sort of, it has that old school like vinyl record, basically. It's the same as a vinyl record, it's just a movie. And so I really like the vinyl record packaging, and so I like Laserdiscs. But I only have a couple of them because they take up a ton of space. It's really not an easy thing to collect. But I do have a couple cool old ones. I know Jurassic Park's one that I thought was pretty cool. And it's incredible. It's still sealed. I have a factory sealed Laserdisc of Jurassic Park. It has a $50 price tag on it. So if you guys think buying Blu-rays for $20 at release is bad, you used to have to pay $50 to get Jurassic Park on Laserdisc. It's just insane. But that's a cool format. I really like to collect that. So another question that come up was, what's the best packaging of any anthology or box set? And for me, that's got to be my Predator set. So I bought this from Japan. I bought it off Amazon Japan. Surprisingly easy to do if you have an Amazon account. But it was probably $100, and it's a Predator bust. You can see it in some of my tour videos. I don't want to go grab it because it's buried back on a shelf with some other figures. I'll knock stuff over, but it's a big Predator head. It has the mask, and the mask is magnetic. You can take the mask off and see the Predator's face. It's got awesome makeup, like graphic work done on it. It's super realistic. The hair moves, and then inside is all the Predator movies, outside of the new one, which just came out last year, obviously, but it has Predator in 3D, and the rest of the Predator movies, and they are region free, so that's pretty cool. You can actually watch them in the US if you don't have a region free player, because they are region, I don't know if they're region free, but they're definitely region A. That's the nice thing about Asia. Japan, at least, is region A, so you can watch any Japanese movie on a US Blu-ray player for whatever reason. But that's probably my favorite packaging. It's over here on the shelf. I display it. But when you take that mask off, it's just so cool. It really feels like something I should have paid more than $100 for. It's just super cool. It was limited edition. A few different places had it. Amazon Japan, Amazon France, Amazon Germany, I believe. I don't think the US ever had it. So you'd have to go find it on eBay or on a, sort of a used site. But they're out there, but they're probably pretty expensive now because they're out of print. Speaking of out of print, somebody asked me if there are any out of print titles that I really want. One of those, yes. First of all, yes, there are a bunch. One of them is The Third Man Criterion. So I have The Third Man in my collection, but it's the Studio Canal UK remastered version. And The Third Man is just such a notoriously hard movie to find on Blu-ray to get the Criterion US release that I really want to have that. I also really want Dawn of the Dead, the original, which is impossible to find. It's super expensive. Good news is I believe I can get a 4K copy. I think one is coming out in the US. There have been rumors, no confirmation as far as I know, but there were 4K releases of it overseas. I'd have to check and see if there's any update on the US version. So I'm going to hold off until that potentially comes out, but that's one I always wanted. Another one I was always chasing was Hot Rod, Andy Samberg movie, but that recently got re-released. I also had Dead Alive. That's one I hunted for a long time, and I actually decided to me that it wasn't it wasn't worth necessarily having the Blu-ray. I loved having the Blu-ray, but I found a DVD copy for like $8. I bought that and I sold the Blu-ray on eBay for like $100, which is crazy. That's another movie that might get a 4K release. I heard Peter Jackson's working on remasters. But yeah, that's a few of the out of print ones that I'm looking for. So if you have them, send them my way. Someone else asked about a movie that's not on 4K that I wish was, and my answer right now is Jaws, because I love the old movies, I love the grain, and I want to see a 4K remastered version of Jaws. I think there's a 4K transfer out there. I can't remember if the Blu-ray that came out was remastered in 4K. Probably not, but it's something that could definitely be done because there's still film prints out there. And I'd really like to see Steven Spielberg get involved with it before, he's gone. Hopefully he's not gone for a long time, but I'd like to see him get involved and restore it, totally remaster it. And I hope they're working on it because I think that would be one of the best-selling 4K titles ever, hands down. I think it would be a slam dunk for Universal. It's probably just a matter of getting the work done. But that's the one I most want. And then other 4K titles that I'd really like to see. Bridge on the River Kwai would be a cool one. I'm not sure if that's come out in 4K yet. Some of the Tarantino stuff I'd love to see. I'd love to go back and watch Pulp Fiction in 4K or Django in 4K or Reservoir Dogs. Any of the older stuff with grain is really where I want to see 4K releases. So those are probably the ones I'm most looking forward to, and hopefully they're coming. Someone else asked me, this is a tough question, but if there was a fire in my house, God forbid, because this is my life. If there was a fire, I'm done for. Life is over. But let's say something else. Let's say I had to sell the entire collection, or I was going to die in a week. Death came down and told me you've got to sell all your movies except for 2 or you'll die in a week. That sounds better to me than a fire, honestly. If a fire came in here, I'd pretty much be dead on the inside anyway. So let's just say Mr. Death comes down in his hoodie, the Grim Reaper, and that's what he tells me. You can keep 1 4K movie and 1 Blu-ray movie, but you got to sell the rest. First off, I'm keeping Jaws on Blu-ray. Absolutely. I would never get rid of that. That'd be my go-to. It's Jaws. In terms of a 4K movie, from what I have in my collection right now, I'd probably go with Mad Max Fury Road because I think it's hands down one of the best 4K transfers out there. I love that movie, and it would keep me entertained while I was very sad about losing all my other movies. I could be entertained with that and Jaws. So I think those would be the 2. and I could sell the rest, but it would hurt. And then a couple last questions. Somebody asked what made me start on YouTube, which is kind of an interesting question. So as I said, I started collecting movies back in 2012. I got real serious about it maybe 2014, 15. I had gotten into the hundreds of titles. And at that point, I actually started working with a few other people from the Reddit DVD collection community. And we started to see what blu-ray.com was doing with their reviews. And we basically started to all take our collections and we started to write reviews of our own on movies we got. That quickly blew up because Reddit's crazy, and we were getting pretty soon 100,000 views a month. My reviews were getting read by tens of thousands of people. It was crazy. And I was writing them. So I would spend hours writing up a review, going through video, audio, special features. What did I think about the movie? Taking screen caps, putting the Blu-ray disc into a drive in my computer, using VLC media player to take a screen cap so you get a good idea of the picture quality, all kinds of testing. And we started to get movies from the studios as well. So we were getting some cool titles to review. And that's sort of how I got into this sort of thing, where I got reviewed titles. I got to know all the different major studios, and my collection really started to take off. I did that for, I want to say 2 years. And then I started a new job. So when I started the new job, it was a little more intense. I had less time on my hands. I had just bought a condo. Life was just kind of catching up, and writing wasn't the best use of my time anymore. And so for a little bit, I wasn't really doing much. I kind of took a break. And then, I have to give credit to guys like Blu-ray Dan, Cinema Sickness, those type of guys that I watched all the time kind of inspired me. And I said, you know what? I've got a collection I think people care about. I think they would think it's cool. And who knows, maybe they'll want to hear what I have to say. So grabbed my phone, grabbed the camera, started taking some videos, got back in touch with the studios, started getting more review copies as my channel got bigger, and just sort of went from there. I had no idea what I was doing. I just said, I'll shoot some videos, see what happens. And, here we are. About 2 years later now, since I started, with 10,000 subscribers. So it really is just unreal. But yeah, I've been involved in the home theater and review community for about 5 years now when it comes to Blu-ray and 4K. The website I used to write for, we actually wrote the first 4K review on the internet, which was kind of cool. One of the guys who wrote ended up getting a 4K Blu-ray player super early, had the 4K TV, adopted everything super early, even before blu-ray.com had any 4K reviews. Our little website had them, so it was kind of impressive. We were kind of leading the charge with 4K, and then I just kind of spun that off and turned it into this YouTube channel. And then sort of the last question is, what are my goals for the collection? And at this point, I wouldn't say that I really have any goals other than I'm trying to just become this film library. I've always said my goal is that let's say 30 years down the line, right? Somebody asks me for that obscure movie that they can't find on any of their new age streaming. They can't download it right into their brain through a microchip because they don't have the rights to it. They got to watch it. They got to find it on a disc. Maybe there's a theater who wants to play an obscure movie, and some old theaters do that. They play old movies. Maybe in 30 years, somebody wants to play something super obscure, and I'm one of the few people who have it. So that's what I think is cool to me. That's my goal in my collection, is just sort of get everything. Old, new, DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, whatever it is. If it's on a format that it can be watched on, I want to try to take it in my collection. I do focus on Blu-ray, but if there are DVD copies of things out there I can't get elsewhere, I will pick them up because I kind of want to have that place. People can come 30, 40, 50 years from now and say, who has that movie? Like film historians, people in colleges looking for these movies. And there might be 5 copies of those Blu-rays left floating around by that time, but I'm hoping to have a few of them. And so my role is just kind of being the archive guy, keeping the film archive alive, and keep promoting physical media because I think it's important. So yeah, that's the Q&A. Long video, but I answered, most of the questions that came in. I feel like I touched on. That gives you some background on me, give you some interesting information on how I got started, how I got started collecting with YouTube, where did I come from? I didn't just jump onto the scene. I've been doing this for a while, and then I turned it into videos. So that gives you some background on me. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, thank you all for 10,000 subscribers. That's the greatest compliment I could ever get. Is having 10,000 people that care enough about what I say to actually subscribe to it. It's a little scary, actually, that many people care about what I say, but it's kind of cool. So yeah, keep subscribing, keep liking the videos, keep commenting. Let me know down in the comments how you guys got involved in collecting. I'm always curious what triggered people. But yeah, other than that, I hope you enjoyed this, little Q&A video, a little different than what I've done in the past, but I thought it was important. I wanted to give back. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you guys soon.